Hello, and welcome to After Effects Tech Desk. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to rotate all of the wheels on this truck with just one set of keyframes using the slider controller with expressions. If you're brand new to expressions in After Effects, this is a great place to start applying them. The setup and basics of how it works are pretty simple, but it can be applied in a lot of different ways to help make your job as an animator much easier. So let's dive in and take a look at how this works. Okay, so here's our setup. We have this simple little truck illustration, and that is the body isolated by itself. And then we have these individual wheel elements duplicated a bunch of times. Okay, so if we take a quick look at this setup that we have here, we have this simple little truck body, and then we have individual wheels all parented to this null. So what we want to do is control the rotation of all of these with one controller so that we don't have to go and keyframe all of these individual wheels, which you could do, but would get to be way more difficult to maintain if you wanted to change the speed or the keyframes in any way, especially if you want to start ramping things. It can just get to be very messy and is really not necessary, because in After Effects we can use something called expressions, and expressions basically give you a way to control or link attributes together. So to get an expression on any parameter that is on a layer, all you have to do is hold Alt, or if you're on Mac, Option, hold that down and click one of these stopwatch parameters. So if I do that on rotation, you can see it adds this little code here. And it's just saying take the transform rotation from here. Expressions are basically a way to write code in After Effects so that you can link different parameters together or simplify the control of those. And the way to get an expression or add an expression to any parameter is to right click it and go to edit expression, or you can hold Alt or Option depending on if you're a PC or Mac, and then click the stopwatch, and that will give you an expression also. If you did that again, you could undo that expression, and you could also hit this little equal sign to just disable it without actually removing it. So that's generally how expressions work, and this is all based off of JavaScript. So if you're familiar with JavaScript at all, you'll understand the syntax a little bit. But basically, what you can do is type in any code in here. So we could just hard code this value if we wanted to just put in a number and just type in 45 followed by a semicolon to close out that. And you can see no matter if we scrub that or keyframe it, it's always going to equal 45 because that's what this code is telling it. If we were to hit that disable expression, now we can use it again. But if we enable it, it will jump right back to 45 degrees. That's not a super helpful method, but that is how it functions. Another argument that you could call in here is you could type value. And what value is going to produce is whatever is in this slider value here. So I'll remove those keyframes. And if I type in 180, you get that value. Now I could also do math inside of here. So you could do value plus a number. So let's say value plus 100. So I typed in 180, then it's going to add 100 to it. So my final rotation is going to be 280. If you can see that the final rotation is 345, you could imagine and guess that the value here is now 245. So you can do that with plus, subtract. You could multiply. And you can maybe start to see how that's helpful. So if we put in 0 to, let's say 100, it's spinning much, much faster, and you don't have to keyframe all of that. So that is the basics of expressions, but where do these slider controllers come in? Okay, so if we go up to Effect or into our Effects window by going into this, I'm going to pull that into this so that we can see it. Pull that out. There's a category here called Expression Controls. And you have a few different controls here. There's a checkbox control, an angle control, a point control, and a slider control. And the slider is the one we're going to talk about today. So, a slider control just applies an effect. It gives you a way to call up another one of these numbers. So the way we're going to use it for this truck is apply a slider control to our null object. And if you see that, we now have slider control on there. And if you select the name and hit enter or right click it, you can rename. And we're going to call this wheel rotation. And now what we can do is essentially make this rotation link to this wheel rotation. And then we will do that for all the wheels so that we can control all the wheel rotation with this one slider up here. It doesn't work with parenting because parenting, if you're going to try and rotate that, it's going to take that position with it. So if I undo that, what we want to do is now make this equal to this. And you could type in a whole bunch of code, but the easiest way is to use this third icon here, which is called the pick whip. And that allows you to select whatever code and pick whip it, meaning drag it to whatever you want to control it. So you could have position or scale or opacity drive your rotation. But in this case, we're going to use this effect controller here. And then when you unclick, and then when you release, you can see that it writes this code here, which essentially writes out a path, a breadcrumb back to that. So you see this comp, we're looking inside this comp, the layer called null truck, that truck, the effect called wheel rotation, and that slider value. And if we put a semicolon there to close that out, you can see we now have this red text again, which you can see indicates we have the expression written. And that value is currently being affected by this expression. And if we wanted to test this out and scrub our wheel rotation on this layer, we're getting that control. So you could come here now and copy, and you could paste that. And you could alt click and paste just the code in. You could select rotation. If you copied the rotation value itself, it would take that and the code. Or if you were to right click it and copy expression only, you can now paste that. And very simply, we are now controlling all of our wheels with this one set of keyframes. Okay, now let's say that we want to take this one step further and it looks just a little too uniform. You know, it's pretty clear that all of the tops are aligned, and maybe we want to just have them slightly varied. So this is where we could come back in with that math that we were doing earlier and perhaps add the value to this slider. So our value that we type in plus that. And if we copy expression only and select the rest of our wheels again and Control V to paste, we'll see that we can now scrub these to offset their original starting rotation so that they're not so aligned, but they're all still being controlled at the same speed, and we still have that control to do what we want with it. Okay, so once again, real quick, let's open up a new comp. So again, all we did here was apply this slider control to a null. That slider control could be anywhere. That could be on another wheel, that could be on the truck body, it could be in a whole other comp. There's a lot of different ways that you could set it up, and it really just kind of matters on what you're hoping to do with it and what kind of control you're trying to gain. But I hope you could imagine some other situations. Alright, well that's pretty much all there is to this one. If you have any questions or running into any challenges with this, please drop them in the comments and I'll try to get you answers to those. If this was helpful for you, please like the video and subscribe for more lessons like this. Or check out my Gumroad page where I have project templates and private tutoring sessions available. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.